Hey, what's up? This is Undrig. I'm going to walk you through some different things on this HighOnBeats tutorial about how to use audio effects racks in Ableton, kind of above and beyond the typical stuff that you sometimes see on YouTube. The goal behind this is to be able to basically jam with audio effects racks by using like toggle switches on your MIDI controller, as well as we're going to be utilizing the fancy little blue hand trick that Ableton allows you to use here. If you look down here, you'll see the blue hand lit up. Basically what that means is that when the blue hand is lit, the 8 knobs on my MIDI controller will automatically correspond to whatever the blue hand has selected. What we're going to do is we're going to take some other audio effects racks and drop them into the existing one that we have here. So I'm not really going to get too crazy into how to make audio effects racks, kind of going into this with the assumption that you know what you're doing in that respect. But what I'll do is I'll just take a few and I'll drop them in here. So this is like a beat repeat. So I'll just kind of name that like beat, just so I can visually see what's going on. This one's a buffer override, which is a free effect from Destroy Effects that you can get online. This one was sent to me by a friend. And then this one's like a Mondo mod. It's the Waves Mondo mod that I simply nested into an audio effects rack and assigned my favorite parameters to the to these 8 knobs over here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to just quickly rename these to whatever they are. So this one's buffer, this one's M-Lovers, and then this bottom one here is Mondo mod, just so we can kind of see what's going on. So everybody kind of knows this trick already, which is the chain selector thing on the macro knob here, where basically what you do is you pull this all the way over here, you go to distribute ranges equally, and that stretches out each effect over here. And so when you hit the map button, of course, you click on the little chain selector up here, and now all of a sudden you have this fancy little thing that toggles between all 4 different effects that you're using. And now basically what we want to do is we want to take this kind of a step further to where we can use MIDI keys on our keyboard to actually trigger each of these 4 effects instead of moving a knob through them. Because who says that you necessarily want to travel through the buffer to get to these other 2 if you're on the beat repeat or something like that. And so what we'll do is there's this fancy little feature in Ableton where if you click on the MIDI button over here, and then if you click on this chain selector thing, what we're going to do is we're going to count the amount of audio effects racks we have here, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. And so that's 4 keys on our MIDI keyboard. So I would suggest using the lowest octave on your keyboard, since you won't really be using it to trigger notes, and you can reserve them for these. What you want to do is you want to count the C key on your very lowest octave. You want to count that as 1, and then you just count up however many effects racks you have. So in this case, we have 4. So what we'll do is we'll consider C, C sharp, D, and then D sharp are the next 4 notes up, counting C. So what we can do is while the MIDI note is, while the MIDI assignment thing in Ableton is highlighted and we've clicked on our little chain selector down here, we hold down the C key, and then while it's being held, we just tap D sharp, since that's the highest range of that we want to assign to this knob, just like that. So now what happens is when we go into here, instead of having to turn this knob per se, I can just, if I hit C, it already has the beat repeat selected. But if I hit C sharp, you'll notice the chain selector knob down in the bottom left-hand corner automatically highlights the buffer override instead. If I hit D, it goes to the M-Lovers effect. And if I hit D sharp, it goes to the Mondo mod, which sometimes for whatever reason, if you have to take this little end part here and drag it all the way over. Not sure why that happens, but either way. So now you notice if we hit those keys, it goes to the corresponding one. However, what we also want to do is we want to make it to where the blue hand on the actual effect rack itself has the blue hand on it. So whatever 8 knobs on our MIDI controller we have will automatically assign to that corresponding effect without having to really mess around with the mouse. There's 2 ways you can do it. You can either hit this little arrow over here where it automatically goes to it for you. However, the problem is that if you're in some other audio effect, or if you're on some other channel over here, when you start hitting those keys, I'm hitting them and you can see the automation lane in the second audio channel moving, but you don't really actually know which one you have selected except for looking at the bottom panel down here. So one way to kind of get around this without having to use the mouse a lot is you want to click the MIDI button again, and then for each of these effects, you click on the beat repeat, and you're going to click on this header over here for the actual audio effect rack itself, and you want to hit the corresponding note that you've already assigned to the chain selector. So we already know beat repeat is C, so we hit C, and you'll see it shows up right in this top panel here. We go to the next one here, click on buffer override up in the top panel, hit C sharp, and then we want to go down to this third one here, click on the top panel, hit D, and then we finally want to go to this last one here, click on the top panel and hit D sharp. So we're done. Basically what happens now is two things happen when you hit the corresponding MIDI note on your keyboard. One, it goes to the effect through the chain, but then also it automatically highlights the effect rack itself with the blue hand, which means that you can now turn your 8 knobs. You can see below, I'm just turning the same 8 knobs. I hit, the D note on my keyboard. Now I'm in a different effect. I turn the same 8 knobs, and now I'm jamming on that as well. And you can do all of this without actually having to touch the mouse at all. So if you're in the mood to, like, say, record like this long passive audio, and just, mash the heck out of it in real time, you can kind of jam out on it, and then chop it up later, or, use it in your music however you want, really. So as you can see, when I jump through here, and even if I have, if I go down here on a different audio channel, if I hit those same notes, boom, automatically goes right back to it again, which is something that it wouldn't have done otherwise if you hadn't done those two mapping assignments. So all you really have to do to go over it again is you just, count how many effects racks you have here, assign it through a key range on the chain selector, and then do a double mapping of those same notes to the headers on the effects racks themselves. So it's a really nice way to kind of have some different flexibility when you put in the tedious time of actually making the audio effects racks themselves. So hopefully this helps some people out, and yeah, have a good one.